And oh, wait, we got to start again, man. Hold on, because it wasn't started recording. Okay, I'll edit. Um, okay. Welcome to the Pure Light Project podcast. My name is Andrea Mai, and today my guest is Connor Kees. And I realized this morning that I've never actually explained what the Pure Light Project is. A friend told me that people don't like projects,
Mm.
or projects end, and that's okay. But the Pure Light Project came in when I first started doing energy healing work and trying to find an umbrella to put all that under, but really humanity is the pure light project. Can we
Mhm.
bring in, can we walk in our infinite light? And
Mm.
so that, my friends, is what the pure light project is. And so Connor, I had the good fortune to connect with uh through his event called the Summit of Light. And a few weeks ago, I had Laura Rose Gage on, and that is his partner. And they put on the summit, and I got to be one of the many people who came to play in that playground. And so Connor and I have gotten to know each other over the last few months, and it's been really, really fantastic. So thank you for coming and playing with me today.
Hmm. I'm excited. I'm excited about this. And
Mm.
the Pure Light Project. We are the Pure Light Project. That in and itself. I mean, we could go on, right? Um,
Yeah,
to think that this is a project is that can just be fun, right? Because
yeah,
children and their playpens, they engage in what you might call a project. A project doesn't have to be anything serious. um, a project can be fun.
yeah.
And the what I like to the so for sort of introduction to me, my name is Connor Kees. I have been a coach in one capacity or another for over a decade now, and I started off as an herbalist, a permaculturist. I got my master's degree and my license in Chinese medicine and acupuncture. I've been a professional astrologer. I've co-owned health food stores, and so um, the thing about all that and all this kind of work that I've done in natural medicine and wellness and whatever you want to call it is that the entire time there's been this undercurrent for me. I can remember sitting my first day in acupuncture school in my chair and thinking, this is going to be fun. I'm going to get a master's degree in Chinese medicine, and I'm going to learn how to use needles and moxibustion and cups, cupping and Chinese medical theory and all this kind of stuff. But I know for this is a really funny memory to me, and I bring this up to people, and like I remember having the distinct thought, this is all entirely spiritual. This
Mm.
is all entirely spiritual. So there's nothing about an acupuncture needle, for instance, that I'm interested in, like modulating what you think of as your physiology or anatomical, any of that. That's just not interesting to me, because there's a knowing that each of us have, and it's kind of like, there's like this invisible assignment that we're on in this pure light project, right? I like to think of it as a roller coaster. There's the great
Okay.
Bill Hicks. There's the Bill Hicks. There's the Bill Hicks. This famous skit that he did about, this is just a ride. This is just a ride. And you know, um, that is the mentality that I really seek to facilitate in myself and in the people that I work with. That
Nice.
we we signed up for this in our knowing. We were entirely conscious of everything that we were signing up for when we signed up for this. By this, I mean the craziest roller coaster ride in the multiverse.
Sure.
You're a naked spirit in front of the fullness of of God in heaven, and you say, and somebody rings the buzzer and says next, and you're up, and you're like, I want to do it. I want to go on the craziest road. I want to go. I'm going to go for it. And Your friends are like, "Are you sure?" And you're like, I'm doing it. I'm gonna be human. I'm gonna be human. I'm gonna remember what it tastes like to drink a cup of coffee and somehow also be convinced by the illusion that the cup of coffee in front of me is somehow separate from me. Right? What a crazy thing. What a crazy thing. So Pure Light Project.
Well, if you could get your
Yeah.
thumb to taste like coffee beans, you know, then maybe it would seem
Yeah.
like less of a right. You just suck on your thumb, right? And
hmm
it would be
hmm
less
hmm
separation.
Yeah, absolutely. If we could cleanse the doors of perception, then that is what thumbs taste like, Um, I mean, this is, yeah. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. So I really love that, Andrea. I love that that's the definition of the Pure Light Project. I think it has to do with your book as well, Ellipses of Origin, that we are somehow this extension. There's something in us calling out to us that knows. There's
Yeah.
something there's something happening here that transcends our this sort of limited, finite, linear sensory apparatus that we call like this human flesh suit, which we seem to be animating. Whatever we are, whatever we even mean by we,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. There's
yeah,
there's language we use because it makes it easier. And then there's that period of time when language becomes very complex. Eh, you know, we and I. So, you know, and you recognize at some point, well, at least I do, that it's all I. However, it's
hmm
also
hmm
we, right? And that's
hmm
it's the relative and the absolute. And
mm,
it's good, and it can screw with your like that is the beginning of the coming back when you recognize that
yeah,
one thing that
right,
it is both and you
yep,
know
yep,
um
yep.
and then it becomes like you can get very serious for a very long time about trying to I
Decades.
spent my 30s and most of my 40s being very serious and and now that I'm 51, I stopped being very serious for the most part a while ago, but
hmm
sincere is beautiful. Sincere is beautiful. So yeah, yeah,
Sincere, um, sincere as opposed to serious, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
what it's for me, the sincere is beautiful. Sincere is beautiful. It's a matter of the place from which we come and the extent to which we identify with that thing. Are you, in fact, do you consciously believe that you are that we are the ellipses of origin, or do you know it in your beyond your bones? Do you is it part of, and I'm not talking about you, I'm saying this is part of the human condition, that we mistake the sensory perceptual world, we mistake what the mind is telling us for reality. And um, this is why these guys in the 1950s, the grandfathers and mothers, Madame Curie and these people of quantum physics, I mean, they were just astounded to discover that everything is pure. We swim in this like unfathomably deep and dense ocean of pure energy. It's infinite. There's an infinite amount of energy in space, and matter is nothing. I mean, you zoom in and it's not even there, and it's not even behaving like you would think. I mean, the everything about the Newtonian way, the mechanical causal way of perceiving things that we have in our senses is false.
yeah.
It's not true. And so this is why Schrodinger slept with uh I'm on a quantum tangent, so we're just going to go with that for a second. Schrodinger slept with the Bhagavad Gita under his pillow and stuff, is my understanding. And so these guys were deeply influenced by what we would call Eastern philosophy. I don't think there is such a thing as Eastern versus Western philosophy. I think they're just using different languages to say exactly the same thing. Heidegger and on being in time is not terribly different from what you would see in these Eastern philosophies. Um, but of course they were Westerners, so to speak, and so they were fascinated by this Eastern philosophy, and they saw this resonance with what they were seeing about the actual deep nature of reality, what's actually happening, what's actually going on here at that level.
Yeah. Woo! And the sirens agree.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I remember. I mean, this has always been um, like I had this innate awareness at a very early age about a
Hmm.
lot of this. I didn't have the language. I didn't have the
Sure.
I couldn't find the resources to explain what I knew. Um,
Hmm.
when I first, and I've said this before on the podcast, when I first uh, read about Taoism in
Yeah,
Houston Smith's World of Religions,
yeah,
or World Book of World Religions,
yeah.
like I didn't understand a single word it was saying, but I understood everything it was saying,
Right.
specifically about the way and the Tao. And then like fast forward, I didn't really give it a whole lot of I was never somebody who sought to break it down. I appreciated that other people did, right?
Hmm.
I broke it down in my own way because it's like
Right.
it's enough to make you crazy. But I remember reading,
Hmm.
I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, seeing it so beautifully. I don't remember the name of the experiment, but where they ran light through and found that a particle and a wave were the same. Like
Exactly.
a particle could act as a wave could act as a particle. And like
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
was just
Hmm.
like, thank you. you know, like
Right.
thank you for the visible picture. I never have needed science to prove anything to me.
Sure. Hmm.
And I'm
Yeah.
perfectly okay with people needing science to
Right.
prove something for them. But it was delightful when it did, when it showed something. Granted, science can prove just about anything, so we won't go down
Exactly.
that.
Well, well,
you
right.
know,
Um, woo.
yeah.
Uh, I
We can
mean,
just leave that can of
well,
worms, I mean,
I mean, so there's something entirely different going on here. I mean,
yeah,
this is the drum that I will, you know, this is the hill that I will die on, or something like that, maybe. Of Look, the conscious mind has the habit of perceiving the world in terms of things that are it bumps up against reality because it believes that it exists. The conscious mind, what you could call it the ego, you could call it the small self, you could call it the whatever. It doesn't matter. I just refer to it as the conscious mind, the person which we believe is talking to us in our heads, this voice that we often hear. And often it can act like a bully. Often it can be really nasty to us. We think that it is us. We identify with that thing. And the funny thing about it is that this voice that's running in our heads talking to us is also the same. It's inextricably linked to a way of perceiving the world, which is by its very nature Newtonian, mechanical, causal, linear, limited, finite, temporal, spatial, right? Rather than the thing which we actually know to be true about reality, whether we need science or not, or there's so much good information out here about, and I like going down those rabbit holes with people because I have spent a lot of time studying quantum biology and like Bohmian mechanics and stuff. And the point is that there's something calling out to us that we know to be the case.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's that sort of transcendental whisper. It's that still small voice, right?
yeah,
And every single thing that our conscious mind tells us about this world, including every word out of that voice in our heads, is by its very nature false. By its very essential nature, it must be false. Every word out of your conscious mind, every single word. Because the truth, like we were talking about Taoism, chapter one of the Tao Te Ching, right, is that the essentially nameless is the eternally real, right? It's the essentially nameless, which is eternally real, like the real thing. You can't put your finger on it. You can barely even. I mean, you really can. You can. What you can do is you can talk about it. You can circle the drain, and you can point your finger at it.
Do you find though, Connor, like,
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Mm.
humanity has been suppressed from these knowings. There's been a lot of things that we, however you want to come at that, you
Right.
know,
Sure.
we, we've been suppressed in our in overall in our ability to access the experience of the fullness which we are, like in a way that goes beyond
Right. Right.
and can be integrated and incorporated, at least in, like, I know you said you don't like Eastern and Western, and there's always this
It's
notion
a
that
helpful. Yeah.
Easterners have a better grasp on this than Westerners.
Mm.
um you know, maybe in the day they did. You probably don't see that as much now, but as the whole world has just become decidedly Western. I remember going
Mm.
back in 2011. I went to Thailand, and that was the big thing. That whole society was sort of morphing more and more. But
Really.
but the thing is as we like, I'm sitting here right now speaking through the lens of Andrea, through the voice of Andrea, to the reflection of Connor.
Hmm.
You know, I but my field of awareness is like huge.
Yeah.
And so and this is something that's come in more and more and more. So I feel myself outside myself
Hmm.
speaking through.
Yeah.
And this is I would say this is something that I've always had moments of, but this is becoming much more an ongoing
Yeah.
experience. Um, and I can get there if I come out of that, if I like compress into this up here, into the stinking thinking, as I love to call it, and I get stuck up here. I literally, like, in a breath, I drop into my heart space and I step
Wonderful.
out through the gate, right? But that's taken a long, long time to be able to get to that place and
Yeah.
be in it more naturally.
That's okay. This is funny because you've pulled out exactly the thing which we just brushed on and kind of talking gently about what we might talk about today. And it's this paradox of the difference between being and doing, to the extent to which there is one. The thing that I would offer maybe about that is that Andrea, her entire life, was always able to get there, to this place of being bigger than yourself, of knowing your essence and knowing what it is you actually are in the place from which you come. And so um, this is a circle which, in terms of squaring the circle, I might offer that this is a circle which need not be squared, because we have, like anything, because all things that are interesting in spirituality, to my mind, which is a funny expression, um, are exist in a place of paradox, right? Because the only way in which being and doing are in some way separate are the way in which our conscious mind perceives them to be separate. And our conscious mind is the thing which filters the light coming through as something other than the entire universe happening all at once, right? And so you perceiving yourself as Andrea and allowing your body to expand, I mean, because it's a paradox. You're not Andrea.
Sure.
Your name is not Andrea. And
Mm.
your body doesn't end with your skin. Your body extends beyond the physical confines of what we know as this knowable, this universe. It goes past that, where there's not even space. There's just, you know. And the same goes for me. And the same goes for everyone listening to this. It's this crazy world that we live in. It's this conscious mind that perceives the wind is blowing and the trees is green and all that.
So let's talk though. Let's talk about how did you come to your experience of this, right? Because I've known people in every tradition. I've been involved up to my eyeballs in, a variety of deep dive, academic, spiritual communities. There's the head knowledge, right? There's
Yep.
the I know the words.
Yep.
I have a hint of
Yep.
it. And then there's the actual lived like the lived knowing of it, the
Right.
deep,
Right.
the peace that passes understanding, like,
Ooh.
so I want to know about you. How did you
Oh.
come to it? When?
So here's this is I love this, and Andrea, this is going to be wackadoodle because I am only going to when asked that kind of a question, my way of relating to this material, this so-called understanding, whatever's going on here, my way of being in this is that I have this really hard fine line where I'm going to refuse to participate in believing that my story is any different from anyone else's, or that to ask me how I've gotten to this place presupposes that time is real, and it presupposes that I exist, and it presupposes that this person who I seem to reference through myself and others as Connor, whatever's happening, whoever's looking through my eyes right now and breathing my lungs, whatever's going on, this deeply mystical circumstantial process that's happening, to separate my experiences separate from anyone else's would be the beginning of the fallacy of, that would lead me to say that, like, enlightenment is also a thing. And enlightenment, there's no such thing, right? Because so much of what we would call our Eastern philosophy and our Eastern wisdom is that enlightenment is not, there's something really odd about the way that we've received this motif of the ascetic monk meditating for years and decades on top of the mountain to achieve a certain state of consciousness. Because just like I would say to past Andrea, who said that she spent decades whatever, and now she knows that she can just drop in. The only thing that's happened there is that Andrea has somewhere, as Andrea's conscious mind, and how she understands her relationship with her past and who she is and whatever's going on there, you've identified with what it is you actually are, and you've held on to the only memory that matters. The only memory that matters is remembering who you are and remembering being infinite. And so in these moments where we identify with our conscious mind and we say, oh, I'm experiencing all this separation, I'm experiencing all this limitation and lack, there's somebody talking to me in my head that I know is not me. That's the trick. I know that it's not me. And I know that I'm capable of identifying with what it is I actually am. And so in other words, the light in you has turned on itself and identified with itself as itself. How's that? I mean, because I love that, and I think it's going to be. I think it's really unsatisfactory to a lot of people because they want to ask those kinds of questions like, well, how did we get here? And my answer is like, I'm not even here. And so like this is what I do when I work with people is we are trying to get to the state where you really do not give a shit about your limitations because you have a deep conscious understanding of those limitations being total bollocks. They're bullshit. Everything that you think is a limitation about you, what you identify with, your life, time, space, material, circumstance, money, energy, it's all unlimited. It's all absolutely completely unlimited. And so we this is a horse which cannot be beat to death. And that's why I call it the one conversation. That's why the work that I do, when you sign up for a coaching session, whatever the hell's going on there, you sign up for a coaching session with me. It's called the one conversation because this is the only conversation that needs to be had, is the one where we forget what it is we have had the habit of thinking that we are, and we remember what it is we actually are, and we just rest in that.
Yeah.
Right? And so that gets us to this place in language where we just circle the drain. I mean, this is why the Taoists, they made fun of themselves for writing so much. It's
Oh
also
yeah.
in like, right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I said I'll just keep writing until the words just stop, you know.
I love that.
Um I know they don't have to be there, but I like to play with them. They're putty. They're delightful. I know they're not necessary, but they're an experience. We're
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
an experience, just like the cup you just drank from is an experience. This
Exactly.
conversation is an experience, you know, and
Hmm.
I spent a lot of time uh, really hung up on the different, thinking there was a difference between the relative and the absolute.
Mm.
And I'm going back to sort of Buddhist sort of terminology, but and then like really recognizing there wasn't a difference when you got there's a spot in which you come into the understanding that but I wasted a lot of my life being like stopped. I put the brakes on, allowing the allness, the fullness to come through, because I didn't know how to actually live in the relative world. It didn't make any sense to me. I still saw the separation between it and there is the
Yeah,
notion of like the illusion. There's many there's many ways to come to what that is.
yeah.
Uh, and so it was how do you walk? How do you just walk through life? When you feel that you're almost there, but there's this level of separation. And then you come into like this for me much more. It's about recognizing, like you started out, right? That the cup of coffee, that it's not actually, it's not different. It's still us. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
but the all that is,
Mm-hmm.
in my experience, the all that is wants to experience,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
I remember that, oh man, God, this has probably been 10, 15 years ago, right?
Hit us. Hit
That
us.
this notion that like the I think it was probably through the Tibetan lineages, right? That universes collapse and begin
Mm-hmm.
again, collapse and begin again. And this
Yeah.
was like identified as eons or aeons of time, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, I was like, "But why?" Right? It was always, "But why?" And,
Right.
oh,
Yeah.
it's just the experience, you know? And when you
Uh-huh.
move outside of time, you begin to understand that. And this, quite honestly, is a total mind screw, right? Like, if you don't if you're listening to this and you're like, "I don't know what you guys are even talking about,"
Mm,
like, or I might get, like, this much of it. It's
mm,
hard to express through a conversation what is inexpressible,
uh,
but, uh, and you
well,
don't need to
yeah.
understand all of it. Um,
I part of my belief about human n- nature is such that it's a little bit like we can take you used you referenced your past self as as there being some sort of switch in, at some point in your what you understand to be your history, right, where you made the choice to identify. And I want to get back to that. Not yet. I don't want to get back to it yet, but that's there's something so wackadoodle in there that I want to talk about. But it's also your listeners will have to graciously forgive the background noise. They're just gonna have to. They're just gonna have to. You know, forgiveness is just granted automatically. This is what it means to be a Christian. So, so you know, it's my belief. It's my belief, and therefore the world that I live in. That um, there's no one listening to this that won't understand it. And the reason why there's no one listening to this that won't understand it, you said, like, you're like a little bit, and someone, if they're drawn in such a way to listen to this, all that means is that that still small voice, that light inside, that something whispering out to you, which has been whispering to you since before you were born. Well, before you were born, it was you, right? And so you, as you've come into this experience, you've taken on this human flesh, this human form, you became a an embryo and a fetus, and you were born. Holy shit, that's a big deal. And then you cried, and you had these relationships with father and mother, and then you began to understand yourself as a being, as something separate from the other. And then you come into relation, and then right, you're experiencing separateness because you signed up for this, you chose to go on this ride. You're like, oh, I mean, the ride's just beginning. You're like, 2 years old, and you're like, no. Because I want something. I want this. I want it now. And your conscious mind begins to kind of the voice on the inside gets this kind of depth and sharpness to it, and it takes on a tenor that it sort of fractally, it sort of like spirals in on itself and creates an identity which then hears itself as itself, right? But your essence is not terribly different from the from the baby that doesn't see the distinction between self and other. We have in Chinese medicine, we have the children are what we call pure yang. They are qian. They are the energy of heaven, um, of pure yang heavenly energy. They come in and they've got this pure yang energy. I mean, it even has to do with the fact that a child can smack the shit out of their head or something like that, and then just be like, woo. They're good. It's like that. It's this pure yang, expansive, unmanifest, formless energy. That's what we call, pure yang, the energy of heaven.
yang, not
Yang.
young, right? Yang,
Yang, yes, yang.
yin, yang.
Hmm. Yep. And so all this is really just to say that, like, my belief again is that anyone listening to this does understand, and anyone listening to this has the very same essential nature that everyone else does. You and I and everyone included in everything, the cup that I drink from, is all one thing happening. And it's just these virtual reality goggles that we wear, that we chose to go on this virtual reality roller coaster when we were, before we were born. We chose to have this experience of separation and limitation, duality, polarity, concreteness, causality, linearity, temporality, spatiality. We chose to experience all this stuff as separate. And that's the fun of it. That's the joy. That's the beauty of it for every single human being on this planet, because we are the ones who seem to experience it the most in that way. Um, we all have that same still small voice. And so that's my belief. The thing before this that really, I'm glad you said it, Andrew, because actually I want to ask you, may I ask you,
You
what
can
is
ask.
what is the thing in that you understand to have happened in your experience that was the switch between some version of Andrea and Andrea's memory, which didn't have access to the knowing and the memory of what it is you actually are, versus the Andrea who now has that knowing ready to hand. It's closer, it's within your grasp, and you, because you know it, and you know that you know it, and you know that you know that you know that you know it. So
Oh,
what's the
yeah.
difference?
I spent a lot of time looking outwardly for confirmation and
Oh,
permission to know what I know. Uh, like a lot. And not because I needed a large amount of it. I just wanted a drop of
right.
it. I
Oh
just wanted,
yeah.
because nobody was having, even in the communities I was part of, they really were just circling around. Everybody was seeking permission. It was the power over others game, and we gave all our inner authority away to the the ones who wore the funny outfits, and the ones who had the letters after their name, and the ones who
Yep.
raised us, and the ones who paid us our paycheck, and over and over and over. And one day I just got really tired of asking permission to know what I already knew. And I stopped. It's still fun, I will say, to find a friend who gets what you get,
Hmm.
not because you need permission or even confirmation,
Hmm.
but just because it's like coming home to yourself,
Absolutely.
you know. So
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
I learned just the other day the definition of Ubuntu from a client, in our English, we often hear Ubuntu as translated as community. And she says, this person said, it's, I am you and you are me. And we know that, right? And so that's I love that. And that's what's happening there as well, is that you both see each other as each other, and in seeing each other as each other, you transcend your limited identities in space and time, and you realize that you are both expressions of the one thing happening.
yeah.
And it gets at this aspect of story, which you're like, I was going to comment on this earlier too. You said something about, nonetheless I still write. You're like, I'm still going to write. I'm still going to, we're talking about how the Taoists, and the Hermeticists, and it's like, wow, well, if it's ultimately ineffable, the Kabbalists, the Christian mystics, I mean, if it's ultimately ineffable, why is there so much written about it? And it's because I, I would call all of that just the one conversation, the one conversation with ourselves, the one conversations with each other. What we're doing is we're using this faculty of language to circle the drain of the Tao, of the one thing that's happening around this kind of black hole singularity of being. And the funny thing about it is that that's the essence. That's the one conversation, the only conversation that ever needs to be had is the one that reminds us who we are. And yet, so long as we wear these virtual reality roller coaster goggles, then there are dishes to be washed. There are there's living rooms to be swept and vacuumed. There's bills to be paid. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm just all that I just said is technically those are technically all limiting beliefs because it's not actually true. However, I'm just zooming out, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's yeah. I mean,
I love it.
it's the experience. You do it or don't do it, you know,
Hmm.
it's not going to change what and who you are.
Hmm.
It may
Hmm.
change the level of satisfaction, or I don't know. It'll just change the experience. It'll just be a different experience. Um,
Hmm. Hmm. But so why? So I'm gonna ask kind of a not a rhetorical question, but I think this is important to get at because in working with my clients sometimes, we talk about this like, look, you signed up for this fully, and you signed it fully on your own recognizance. You knew exactly what you were signing yourself up for. You like the informed consent in heaven is top notch, and so it's like, why do I feel this? I'm like, look, we just reiterate, it's like, in your essence, exactly how powerful you are, and you know exactly what's going on here. And the thing that we sometimes, it's this weird forgotten thing. It's a weird thing to forget, and forgetting everything that we are. One of the weirdest things to forget is forgetting about the importance of what we want and how we want to feel and what it is that we want to do, the doing of which does not feel like doing. So there's a part of Andrea, whoever the hell that is, right? That in its expression of what it is as it is, just writes.
yeah, yeah,
And that's all there is to it. I mean,
yeah,
like, yeah, I mean, does that resonate?
yeah. I mean, it's there's the things you will just do, and you go like if you go all the way with deconstructing the thing,
Hmm.
and at the end of it,
Hmm.
you come back to it just because it makes you happy. And you
Come back to
know
it. Come back to it, meaning what? Come back. You said you
come
deconstruct.
back to the writing or the singing
Uh-huh,
or
uh-huh.
the working with numbers or the playing with dogs.
Fly fishing.
You're going to come back to
Yeah.
it, whatever it is for you.
Hmm.
And there are lovely layers and layers of that a person can go through as you begin to shed these identities and lose your identity around it, walk away from your identity around it, because there's layers. There's times when it's an addiction or a numbing device or a forget who you are device,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and and then you have to let go and let go and let go, and then find your way back to it, uh, much like a child, right? Um, I've had this experience many times, and it's a good process to go through when something is your label, your identity.
Right.
Um, because you like to do something. Like, yes, I say, for lack of a better term, I am a writer, but
Right.
I am,
Exactly.
and I write, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
Yeah. Well, I
ri-
am that I am.
yeah, and so like
Mm,
there was times when I didn't, when it was uh, a parent. I am a parent. I am a mother. I am a father. I am a spouse. I am an entrepreneur. That is my blood and my bones, baby, right? Like, that's not actually my blood and my bones, but like people who it, against all reason or odds, they lay everything into that. That is their, I like to look at it. So you talk about it as the roller coaster ride.
mhm.
I like to think of it as either the experiment that I'm going in on. I'm testing
Right.
all the edges and angles of this thing to find
Yeah.
out. It's like data points. You know, what is the data that I can collect uh, consciously, unconsciously, subconsciously, whatever. Like, there's some aspect coming through this that wants, that doesn't want it. It's that it values that those data points enough for me to devote a good portion of time and energy towards exploring it, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so
Mhm.
that it's lovely. Like, when you get to that, it's like it's actually so comical how serious we
Right.
all take ourselves at certain points,
Right. Right.
around X thing, X identity, you know. Um,
Right. Mhm. Mhm.
yeah.
Somehow we know in our bones that there's nothing serious going on here at all, and at the same time, we can't help but have this thing talking to us. The way to be in right relation with that thing in our minds that yammers on about scarcity and lack and separation, and the way in which it just, there's a way, it's like a motto of mine, there's a way of being in this world which greases the wheels, and it greases the wheels back to the knowing of that which it is we actually are. And so the mind can do none other than participate in stories. The identity of myself, identification of myself as myself, being Connor in that sense, is a story, and I'm partaking in this story. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a matter of the extent to which there's an overarching, there's a kind of archetypal story being told. There's something, there's a myth, there's something else going on. To what extent can we be in relation with these conscious minds of ours in a way that points us back to that, right? So the question is, and this is kind of what I was really pontificating on as you were talking earlier, and it feels really big because it feels like a piece to this puzzle, which uh, there's a choice. I've been known to say that, to think that I'm choosing to make my mouth move to make these words come out, to think that I can choose to have the cup on the right side of my computer or the left side, and to think that I can choose, right? So there's this sort of mundane version of free will, which is like, oh yeah, well, I could choose to do this instead. And that to me is a bastardization of what you would call, what I would like to call something like free will in its divine aspect, right? And so there's a kind of there's another version of free will happening, which isn't this like mundane. It's like, there's this debate in philosophy of compatibilism, or is this, determinism versus free will. To what extent is everything determined, or everything totally, do you have free will? There's like this philosophical position which they have in certain intellectuals, where they call it compatibilism. It's like it's a little bit of both. Well, I would like to posit some kind of transcendental compatibilism, which is that, and it's not terribly far off from what we would think of in certain religious or spiritual circles as aligning your individual will with divine will. Here's the catch, here's the rub, right? Where the extent to which my conscious mind it thinks of my individual will as in any essential way different from that divine will is going to be a stumbling block, because to align my individual will with the divine will as if those are two separate things is false. So then aligning your divine will, your individual will, divine will, then can just be reframed as discovering what the will of the world actually is through you. Discovering what the will of the world actually is through you. And if in choosing there is only one choice to be made, and it's choosing, there's this thing that it's a recording that I have somewhere about choosing the one choice, and anything that is not choosing the one choice of choosing is not choosing. There's only one choice to be made, just as right. Does
You
that
need to put that on a T-shirt, Connor.
exactly? And it's a whole paragraph. Yeah. So, uh,
Seriously, you'll make bank. All those scarcity issues will be solved. Right? Just put,
all right. Hey. All
you
right.
heard it here first.
I,
Right, right.
yes, I did. Um, yeah.
And so all
So
of these
yeah.
things, right? Yeah, I mean,
Mhm,
we have this circling.
mhm, mhm,
It's
mhm.
we can also just rest.
Yeah.
You know, that's actually
Mhm,
for me where the answers actually arose from. It was never in my trying to noodle my way through it. When I would sit, I hear a lot of ascension
mhm.
and um, sort of people speaking about what is happening now. And I am one of those to some degree,
Right.
speak about
Sure.
how we don't need to do all the things we did in the past, that we don't
Right.
need to do the lengthy practices, and
Right.
that it's just available to us because our bodies are shifting and transforming, and the light is coming through, the density is leaving, and so the forgetfulness is leaving. But there is, from where I sit, there is so much still just struggling, so
Sure.
much suffering in terms of, well, how do I do that better and faster? And there's no
Sure.
stabilization. There's no, it's a whirl. It's a loop de loop de loop. There's no, there's no peaceful ground upon which people are still striving, in the
Yeah.
conversations of sovereignty, in the conversations of free will.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We don't actually have to solve anything,
Amen, sister.
you know. And so
Amen.
we should probably acknowledge that we just like to play with these things.
Because the conversation of attaining sovereignty, attaining enlightenment, or some kind of something, right? It's the very conversation presupposes that the thing is other than us. The
Yeah.
very conversation presupposes that this is something which, to say, even to say that we don't have to do as much work as we had to do in the past is a falsehood, because it implies that we ever had to do work in the past to begin with, or that we have to do any work now. This is like
Yeah.
kind of what I was, you know,
Yeah.
the funny thing about we were talking about Andrea, who before something clicked or she made some choice, which is really, really interesting. That's a very fascinating piece of this puzzle that this conversation has facilitated some knowing, some language for in me, which is fun, right? But there's a choice to be made to identify with that which it is we actually are. But we can, like, I mean, the reason why I say this with such knowing isn't just because like I'm because I know this, but in conversations with clients, we sit down and they open up and we have a conversation that I call the one conversation, and it lasts maybe 60 minutes to 90 minutes, usually 90 minutes. And they touch down on their essential being in that conversation. It's not, you could believe that you have to live in the ashram and sweep the porch for 7 years and do this and vespers six times a day or whatever it is, I don't know. Or it says in the Tao Te Ching, it says it is nearby and easy to seek. It is nearby and easy to seek. And so this experiment, this roller coaster, whatever the hell's going on, this play, this drama, this story, this theme park, what's this experience is then an invitation to believe the truth. It's an invitation to believe the truth about the reality which we know underpins all of this, And the funny thing that when we first started, before we hit record and stuff, is that I woke up this morning, um, um, wanting to talk about the collective in exactly that way that you're talking about, when you're like, look, there's obviously something going on in the story that's being told through what we perceive as humankind, civilization, this reality that we're kind of, this consensus reality that we're living in. There's things happening, right? And we also know too that there's been these kinds of expansions and contractions throughout all of history, right?
Yeah.
To the extent to which history exists. which it only does in a kind of collective memory which identifies with that, right? and
Yeah.
so and so I find that really fun to talk about and really fascinating, because I talk to people from all kinds of disciplines and backgrounds, and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. And they can have a background in quantum mechanics. They can know the wooji language of ascension and all this kind of stuff, or they can not. And they
I I
yeah.
I love you and your
Wha- is yeah.
wooji language of ascension. Yeah.
um
Like, yeah.
yeah, right. And and we all understand entirely what's going on here. So for me, it's funny that, like, I don't know. I mean, I should honor it. Yeah, something is going on. And in the story that's being told here, we have an increasingly liberal theology among people in general. Um, Fundamentalists, religious fundamentalists around the world, some of them tighten down, and some uh, give up the ghost. And you know, you know, James Allen famously said that um, the person who I'm gonna butcher this quote, but the person who understands the truth to be in their religion but not in their neighbor's religion has has yet to uncover the truth in their own, the
Sure.
actual truth in their own religion. And so there's in the same sense in which there's one heart, one love, one mind, one person in the room. There's one thing that's happening. There's one story that's being told. There's also only one science and one religion, right? And so I we are touching down on that again. And who knows, who knows? I mean, my vision of the future is incredibly abundant. It's incredibly abundant. And uh God, for a gross lack of better word, of a better means of expression, enlightened.
Yeah.
It's whatever the hell that means. Let's just use enlightened to mean lightened up. My burden is light and my yoke is easy. It's light.
Yeah.
It's not heavy. It's not weighed down by the assumption that the conscious mind's perception of reality have anything to do with who it is we actually are. And so, um, what do you think about that, Andrea? I think I should ask you, because my mind on these topics of like collective and the future and time and all that kind of stuff is it's it's I find it challenging to talk about it in a way where I continue to hold that line with myself about you know where the one conversation, so to speak, begins and ends. About that choice to be oriented to essential nature in that way. So, like, what do you think in those terms?
Well, first I have to have a question. Can you hear my dog barking her head off?
I cannot hear your dog barking her head
Okay,
off.
good. She is really going to town in the other
Ooh,
room, so
I just heard one little yip, but that's it. We're
and
good.
it's very shrill. So I just was
Yeah.
checking.
Well,
But
we've had diesel trucks and all kinds of stuff going by, so
yeah, yeah. It's so it's an interesting so the notion of time for me, I really am experiencing more and more and more everything as one moment.
yeah.
Um, and it's kind of neat actually, because I'm not so like in it that I can't see that it's not been that way through this lens, through these eyes.
Yeah.
And so it's fun. It's like I mean a year ago, year and a half ago, I was like, okay, just like take me out of here. Like nothing's new, nothing's fresh. I am so over this bullshit, you know. Show me a reason to stay.
Mm.
Um,
Mm. Mm.
because this has taken a really long time. Um, and so I found my heart and compassion for us all bubble up, you know, into the experience of this one thing having many experiences.
Mhm.
Uh, I feel as though it's just gonna go the way it goes, and all we can be responsible to and for is how we walk through it.
Yeah.
I've talked about this a lot lately. is that we keep waiting for the other to make their change, to stop pissing me off, to like get it. Come
Yeah.
on, just get it, And like it's like, oh wait, come on, who is wanting
Exactly.
them to get it, right? And
Hmm.
so it
Hmm.
really is deep, deep, deep personal responsibility, like recognition within. And this is a very deep practice when you really commit to that. It happens fast. Yeah, is my experience. It goes quickly.
When you commit to what, will
When
you
you
reiterate it
commit
for me?
to truly being uh, fully responsible for whatever's happening in your line of vision that
Right.
you're aggravated with or
Hmm.
not satisfied with,
Hmm. Hmm.
recognizing that is it's you, but it's also like it's a reflection. Whatever it is doesn't matter. It's pointing you into what
Right.
needs to sort of like shake
Exactly.
out inside of you. And
Exactly.
so, we've had so many stories and theories, and it's all good. It's all perfect. I spent
Mhm.
2 years, um, like there were timelines where I think they were very different because we have continued to come more and more into our fullness,
Yeah.
into the all of which we are
Mm.
collectively, individually,
Mm.
collectively,
Mm.
that I have seen things I never would have expected to see um,
Yeah.
happen very rapidly. At the same time, watching those who still want to stay hidden from themselves,
Mm. Mm.
from their fullness,
Mm.
the
I would offer,
fullness.
yeah, I would offer that they don't, it's not actually what they want. They don't actually want to stay hidden from their fullness. We want to have the most fun that we can possibly have on this roller coaster ride because it's a roller coaster ride. Why else do you take a roller coaster?
Oh, dude, I'm not taking roller coaster rides. I lose my voice. Like I get laryngitis. No, that's awful. That's the worst ride in the world, man. Your
No,
bladder goes
look.
up your throat. It's awful.
Well, I've been on two. In my memory that I've yeah. So it's a metaphor that I use because I just do.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea uh is that this is fun and that you chose to go on it. Nobody forces you on a roller coaster unless they do, in which case, I don't think that's how heaven works. But um yeah, you know, um it's this is this part. See, here's what I find really when it so and I relate everything to the one conversation and the work that I do with individuals or groups, and it has to do with like when we were just talking before and we were circling the drain. It's almost like there's moments in this conversation in which there was nothing left to be said because we were just circling the drain of all being, and you can look at it, you can gaze into it, you can't say anything about it, but um, let's let this diesel truck pass.
It's like a disco ball, right? God bless
A
disco
disco ball.
balls. Okay.
What's a
Disco
disco? What's a
balls,
disco ball?
like we are the thing, you know,
Yeah.
w- the all is a great big disco ball and then
Yeah.
another disco ball looking back at itself, and it's like,
Right.
or it's like one
Right.
laser going through a mesh into a million ways
Exactly.
seeing itself,
Exactly. Do you
that's
know the
it.
metaphor? Yeah. Do you know the metaphor of Indra's net?
It's familiar. I can't. I've heard it,
Indra's
but I can't tell you what it
Indra
is.
Indra, if I'm not mistaken, is a uh, it's a manifestation of Vishnu, and I think, and Indra's net is a it's a sort of a Hindu cosmological construct where the reality in its fundamental nature is um, a series of jewels known as Indra's net, and every node in this net of Indra's net, that's what the universe is made of, this net, where there's a jewel at every node in the net, and they're faceted in such a way, these jewels, that every jewel reflects in the single facet of any of the jewels, every other jewel in the net. Every one facet reflects. You can, by if you looked into the facet of one of those jewels, you could see the reflection of every single other jewel. And actually, Hindu cosmology is full of these. There's one about a series of towers where there's one massive bejeweled tower, right? And to say it's a massive bejeweled tower is a gross understatement. Where the tower is so tall, but you go inside the tower and you find that inside the tower are all more towers. There's towers inside of these towers, and every tower has exactly the perfect amount of room around it. Every tower fits inside these towers, and there's just more. It's a matryoshka. It's a Russian, nesting doll of fractal, reiterative. It's I am
Yeah.
that I am. I am that I am. It's by its very nature. It's this holographic, fractal, recursive thing that we're experiencing here.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so it's
And
funny
then
to
we
me.
come back and then we
Yeah,
come back, the dishes have to be done and the floors have to be swept, right?
right. Yeah, and my question about that is that hmm, do they have to be done, or are they capable of being naturally and effortlessly done on their own by some sort of invisible hand acting through us in our lives when we find the joy to put ourselves first in exactly the ways that we know are most important to us in truth, right? Where we have the ability to be energized by the things which inspire us and empower us, and the doing of the things which need to be done in a way where we touch down on our essential being. We come back for air from grabbing a handful of sand from the bottom of the ocean of being, and we look at it and we're like, that's right, I remember who I am. So doing the
Mhm.
dishes in this way is just the doing of the things which are, right? So doing and being are not separate in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read, I don't know, last year, year before, I started this book. I just wanted something light. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, it's just been so heavy, right? This last
Yeah.
4 years, like,
Yeah.
oh my God, just give me a Nora Roberts book and let me slide away to something easy, And so
Sure.
in this story, I picked it up because I believe it was called The Awakening or something like that. And it was about this woman who had basically forgotten who she was, and she was part of the Fae. She was not just part of them.
Mm,
She was the queen, to be the queen of the Fae, of the fairy uh kingdom or queendom or whatever, the peoples. And and in that
mhm.
place, when she walked through this portal in Ireland, the things just did. The kettle just made the tea,
I love it. Yeah.
and I was like, yes, you know, yes, um,
Yeah.
it, I believe that as we discover, recover, remember,
Uh,
whatever you want to
mm,
call it, right?
mm.
What and who we are and the fullness, we will go naturally. Now, I can't say the timeline this happens. We will go naturally towards the experiences. If everything that needs to be done, nothing needs to be done. Nothing.
Right.
Like nothing.
Amen. Amen.
If the experiences that are wanting to be had by the all, right? Like, and I hate the word want. I get all the things, but that some aspect of all will naturally gravitate towards the doing by
Yeah.
being, right? There's somebody who's gonna love hauling the trash, right? They're gonna get
Hmm.
some satisfaction, or we're gonna stop making trash. You know, the
Anything is
timeline in
possible.
which this happens,
Anything is possible.
we're
Yeah.
infinite. We've got eternity. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
e- yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in the
Mm-hmm.
fact that we chose, and there's any number of stories, that we chose, but we were trapped, or we, like whatever. I think that everybody comes to their perspective, and it's none of my business how they got to their perspective, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
their story and their storyline through any number of lifetimes, incarnations,
Right.
realms, any of it,
Right. Because it doesn't matter.
uh, yeah. And so yeah. So yeah, I like to think that, but I actually like to sweep. I don't do it very often, but I really enjoy.
Yeah. Exactly.
I actually really like the satisfaction. I'm pretty sure I've had some little incarnation as a French storekeeper who went out and swept my little portion of the sidewalk every morning. I get
Yeah.
so much satisfaction, right? Like
Yeah.
literally, like it's just joy.
I feel that way about doing the dishes.
Yeah.
Um, not unloading the dishwasher, but loading it. So right, and there's a and there's it's um that is an abundant view of reality, right? That is a belief, to believe that that is possible, that when we get out of our own way, that the things in this world have a way of naturally slipping into place in a way that feels good to us, and makes
Yeah.
the experience of being here um joyful and abundant and pleasurable. That's the whole point of taking this roller coaster ride, is how sexy it is to think that I'm separate from the cup of coffee when I'm not, you know, to think that I'm separate from my lover, to think that I'm separate from the person who I'm, on a call with. It's there's something about that duality, that polarity, that coming apart, that makes the coming together all the more joyful, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so and so that's 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 just a fun thing. Yeah.
Uh, it,
But
the other night, my wife was laughing at me because we were dancing in the living room, and I love to watch myself dance. I am not a great dancer, like I'm.
that's
It's not like
awesome.
I'm like, but it's that like there's joy. I like
Yeah.
watching, and that's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
take that out further
Yeah.
and further. We like
Amen.
to the all likes to experience itself somehow.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
that's as
Yeah.
much as I can come to. I
Don't you think
otherwise
that's it though? I mean, don't you think, I mean, you can't
nothing
go
else
any,
makes sense.
and you also can't go any further down that rabbit hole with language. You can in your understanding, you can in your knowing, in your being, in your experience, you know, but in the same way that you think that it's you looking through your eyes, and you think that it's you breathing along and making your mouth move, it's also it's also somehow not possible when you've allowed the fullness of what you are to animate not just this earthly hairless ape-like flesh suit that you have, but to allow your body, what you understand yourself to be, to extend past the bounds of the physical universe, then what can you, I mean, you can't describe that feeling, but you can feel that feeling.
Yeah.
You can know that that's the truth,
I
right?
mean, we make up a lot of words. You know, I have book upon book upon book upon
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
book of
yeah,
just words, right? We
yeah,
love our words and we need none of them.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, the thing that I kind of want to maybe kind of wrap up with, I think,
Yeah, let's
is for our listeners who've been with us this whole time.
if they dared.
I want us to feel the difference between, because this is why I think this conversation has been important for me personally, and what I understand myself to be is I woke up this morning wanting to talk about the collective, and you know what? We've entered into the one conversation here, and you know what? I tried to tried, which is a funny means of expression there, but
Yeah.
I I I asked us to kind of like slip into a mode of thinking about what ascension means and all this kind of stuff, and about what's happening to the collective in time and what we think of as time and history and that whole story, this kind of like the story of rapture, you know and I wonder if the listeners, because I can feel it, and I wonder if the listeners can feel the difference in the energy and the expansiveness when you and I do that thing, when the one conversation is on, and we just circle the drain, and we just know, and all we can do is talk about the meaning of being this mushroom that's fruiting out of the ground of being, and we sit in our infinitude and we just bask in the glory of it all. The difference between that and even trying to qualify or quantify what we think might be happening to, say, our human species or our collective history, what will be our future history and things like that on this planet that we perceive ourselves as this rock and hurtling through space, that there is a knowing in us which is naturally abundant and energized and full and free. And even our attempts at, in some cases, being spiritualizing the quest that we're on of this collective expansion, this ascension, or whatever the hell is happening, that it's actually challenging to have conversations in terms of time and space as time and space, and not allow the conscious mind to bring in the same kind of limitation. So it actually feels fuller and freer and truer to just be here and to just know than to talk about, you know, like UFOs and aliens and consciousness in this kind of expansive ascension way. I posted a joke on my, I don't know if you saw that before we went live today. I said I'm going on today with Andrea Mai on the Pure Light Project. I said, let's see if we can get her to talk about aliens. and,
Bring it
and
on.
no, what's funny is we don't need to, because the
Yeah.
essential question there, the point of it, is that we are the aliens.
Yeah.
It's us, and I think we know that. Yeah. What do you think?
Hmm. It's a good place to uh, bring it in, bring it
Hmm.
in, bring it in. Oh, so yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Connor, for
Hmm.
being
Hmm.
here. Um, I was like, oh yeah, this will be a fun one, right? Because there's no reining in my friend Connor. I was like, let's do it. Let's have some fun.
And
Uh,
I tried to even rein myself in, and this reining in, it doesn't feel as good to allow the conscious mind to believe what the conscious mind is has the habit of telling us is true about this world, these sort of sensory
yeah.
perceptions, as it does to just point the finger at the one thing and go, wow.
Uh, and we don't need. I continue to have these conversations wherever they go
Hmm.
because somebody out there, even if it's one person or it's you and I, that we're supposed to have
Hmm.
this conversation just for just for this, it is. I've often thought, oh, I should just like stop doing the podcast, it's not like my main
Mm,
priority, but there is a reason that it continues to
absolutely.
ask to be, and so we get to come together and play and find out a little bit more about all that we are.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So where do
Mm.
people find you, Connor? I know, but why don't you tell them?
um, really, the place right now is connorkeys.com. That's CONNER. It's Connor with an E.
Yep.
KEES. Keys with two E's, no Y. Connor with an
Yep.
E. Keys with two E's. ConnorKeys.com. And I'm on YouTube as Connor Keys. I'm on Instagram as Connor Keys. I'm on Facebook as Connor Keys. I'm on TikTok as Connor Keys. So whichever platform is best, I try and these days kind of keep up with most of them, but my main platforms are Facebook and Instagram. But if you want to kind of get in the loop, want to kind of come more into my world, really, then you go to connorkeys.com, click the button, take the little survey, asking you about where you're at in your spiritual journey, and then we can just sign up for a conversation if you want to do complimentary conversations that in some cases last up to an hour, which is me just gathering information about the person and learning how I can help them. And then, if they choose to, then we take it a step further. So that's how to do it.
Nice. Nice.
Hmm.
All right.
Hmm.
Well,
Hmm.
wonderful. All of these, points, you'll find them in the description for the podcast. So if you're watching this
Hmm.
on YouTube, just check out the description. If I manage to get this actually posted on my podcast platform, I'm about 6 months behind on that. Uh, but I feel like it might be time again. And you're
Cool.
listening to this, just check it out. And my name is Andrea Mai, and I'm excited to keep having these conversations with people who genuinely come from their heart
Hmm.
and their wisdom and their curiosity. And so, yeah, we're doing this thing. I'm excited. I have a new book coming out this
Hmm.
week, and it is just a whole bunch of fun. And it's called 51. And I really went the creative distance with that. I turned 51. I was like, I'm going to write 51 poems. And
Yeah.
so it's called 51. Now, interestingly, the Tao Te Ching, number 51, yeah, it has a lot to me. I love that. I love that. So
But, is isn't what is 51 divisible by?
Well, it's 17 times 3.
Oh, it's
Um,
17 times 3. Okay. I was like, is that a prime number? No. Okay, no.
yeah. So, anyhow, there
Oh,
you
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
it.
Okay, there you go.
You can find out more about me in so many places,
Yeah.
but they'll be linked in the description. So,
I I also I want to you know uh I want to plug your conversation with Laura Rose
mm,
Gage, because I think it was it the opener to that, how that podcast just begins, I think is it's on the video rather,
yeah,
um
yeah,
is the greatest. I, please go watch it. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please go watch Andrea's interview with Laura Rose Gage, which she did prior to this one. I mean, obviously, unless we're, time doesn't exist. So,
yeah. I don't know.
um, I think it was an awesome conversation. I want to plug that one for your listeners. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
It was super duper funny
Wasn't it?
in the beginning. I mean, oh,
Yeah.
but yeah. Well, thank you, Connor, for being here.
Absolutely, dear sister. Thank you.
Let's
Hmm.
keep on shining. Peace
Absolutely.
out, my
Much love,
beloveds.
y'all. All right.